All right, welcome everyone. I'm Wes Warren. I'm here with Greg Stanley. We're from Whitehall Management, and today's topic is creating a win-win for associates and for the owners. And obviously, that sounds simple. It's like, duh, yeah, I want to create a win-win. But there's a lot of pitfalls that people fall into on both sides. Well, if you're not aware of it, if you haven't been around and created associate practices, you might not even know that you're walking into a pitfall where you're creating a win-lose scenario. Greg, obviously you've seen a lot of this stuff over the years, things that you've observed doctors do that you now obviously you realize that this creates the problem where it's not balanced, where it's not a win-win. What have you seen? What's the common mistakes that
Okay,
doctors?
let's go through a couple of them. Okay.
Okay.
One is maybe you got a relative who's a lawyer, or maybe you've had to sue somebody into submission about something before. And do you think you can catch an associate right out of school when they're weak and needy and tie them into a contract that basically makes them serve you like slave almost? Oh, you give them some money, but you give them what you want to give them, And if they don't, if they try to leave, and Wes, you talked about win-lose. Associates won't lose for long. They have a tendency to bow up after a time. So this idea that the quality of contract can handcuff them to you while you literally take their earning power and divide it with them, so to speak. Well, that's one pitfall. The other I've seen is where doctors go into things, maybe somebody they knew in the past, and somebody, an associate, who comes to them as an associate, and they have a handshake agreement, or just a verbal agreement. And it turns out that when they aren't happy, grab the patients and run down the road, you realize you literally have nothing. You go to a lawyer and they say, well, we'll try to sue. We can certainly win some legal fees.
Yeah.
But we won't probably be able to get your patients back. So you've got to understand what the win-win is. We are not looking for associates in a weak moment of life to bind them with work. By the time you have a lawsuit involved, that might fall under the lose-lose category. When you win, you lose, okay? I saw a lawsuit that was finally settled for $1.1 billion. And in the end, there was a $1.1 billion in legal fees. It wasn't with dentists, but it was in business, kind of a typical scenario. What we're looking for is something we can both come out ahead. Here's the things that get thrown around. Number one, where do I get the patients? And the doctor who doesn't really know, the owner who doesn't really know the score says, well, go get your own. And then the associate's thinking, if I have to go get my own, why would I work for you? And that's probably the first point of departure right there. You're on the wrong path. The owner gets the patients, gives them to the associate in a practice filled with trained, competent veteran staff. And out of those patients, the associate is able to make money. The owner doctor can keep % of what the associate. And this is where associates hear things, and this really just gets them in trouble. They hear things like 35%, 50%, and all these big numbers. Well, they don't realize those numbers are unsustainable, just like the owner's got to be able to get 15% out of this deal month after month to make it worth continuing. And so as an associate, you got to be good with that. So if you go to the owner and say, I got to have 30 or 35%, and you, because you heard of someone else getting 30%. Well, remember, they come back and say, well, okay, but you pay for your labs, you pay for your CE, you pay, in other words, they can just heap it back on you. But in the end, the owner's got a net 15%. And if he doesn't, and it's the marketing, whatever. Well, that's on the owner. That's not on the associate. So as an associate, you can hope to thrive with earnings without earning equity. Now let's talk about that. That's another one people point out after they talk about the unrealistic percentages. They'll talk about, well, aren't you going to be an owner there? I mean, you need to be an owner. And this is some unskilled, untrained observer throwing, it could even be an accountant throwing in their 2 cents. It's usually your spouse that's trying to remind you that you don't get equity. Yeah, but you don't have $1,500,000 of debt that you have to pay off at unknown interest rate. See, that's what associates tend to forget as people keep kibitzing from the sidelines that you should be earning equity. You should be an owner. Yeah, well, you can go get your own practice. You'll be in debt, a massive amount of debt, and probably be shy of the capacity it takes to really produce a good amount of dentistry. What have you seen, Wes?
Well, I would say that that as far as on the associate side, definitely where they start to push for too much money, where the deal starts to be, like, why am I doing as the owner? You know, as they start pushing for 35%, I definitely see that as a problem, and eventually, kind of the owners wondering why they're doing this. On the owner side, like you said, kind of a draconian contract where you're feeling like you want to lock them in. I see a lot of this trying to do 5-10 mile radiuses, all this with the idea that they'll never work in this town again type of contract. And those just don't work. The real secret is not any of that. The real secret is providing an opportunity for the associate to actually come there and produce. You get an associate that can come there and really hit big numbers. What's big numbers? Let's clarify that. I would say somewhere north of 5,000 a day. Anywhere north of 5,000 a day, you're really providing an opportunity, especially if it's not contingent of them being some sales superstar and just gifted with people. When you can just take an ordinary person, ordinary dentist, couple years out of school, and they can hit the ground running in your office, and you can get them at 6,000 a day. So anything over 5,000, you're creating an opportunity where it is a win. And as long as you're paying them below 30% or below, you've done it. You've created this. But anytime it's one or the other, and your opportunity is 3,000 a day, 4,000 a day, you're going to run into problems with getting them to stay, getting them to they'll want to buy in. All this stuff starts to happen when you cannot provide that opportunity. That's what I would say. That's the key. And those are the numbers.
Keep in mind also, if the target for the owner is 15%, we're counting on the owner not to go crazy buying technology, adding 15, 20,000 a month to the overhead with what are proved to be unnecessary purchases. In other words, be realistic. Also, if the owner sets the fees for the practice in an unrealistic way, you won't be able to sell much. People won't buy much, and they won't refer, they won't come back. In other words, they need guidance. If not, it's kind of like you said, Wes, they're not really providing an opportunity. It's just a place to go to die.
To hang a shingle and build your own practice. If that's kind of your stance on it, like, oh, they got to build their own practice, they got to build their own following. If that's the way you're thinking, I can promise you're going to run into a problem where it becomes lopsided. And if they have to go do that, they're doing too much. They, quite frankly, become too powerful. Is what happens. If they're the ones having to build the relationship, build their own practice inside your practice, they start to go, why am I doing this for you? And you run into problems. It needs to be hit the turnkey situation. Step in with you said it in the beginning, trained staff, well-oiled machine, great systems, and maybe some marketing patience, sure, but you just step in and you can hit the ground in 3 or 4 months and produce 5,000 a day plus.
And pretty soon they're taken home $250,000, 350,000 a year. They didn't go in debt $1.5 million. They go home at night without worrying about, how they're going to make it, In other words, it's a pretty good life. We are finding more people looking for that, which is really kind of a good thing.
I mean, to be honest, they would have to, if you're producing $1 million a year in an office, which we have plenty of associates able to do that, and that's the opportunity I'm talking about creating. They're taking home 300,000. For them to go do this on their own, what are they going to take? 350, 375? The risk that they take on for that last little bit, they view this as a good deal. And what we're seeing is these people stay. They don't run off and buy a practice. What we're seeing is a lot of these people stick around.
Probably be a good idea to really interview them, talk to them about the kind of dentistry they want to do and want to be a part of. And if it's a good fit, then like Wes said, a little tiny bit of additional money probably isn't even worth leaving for. And if they can stay and do a good job for 3 to 5 years, if they go, they go, and we wish them well.
That's right. That's right. But in the end, it has to be a win-win. You have to create a scenario where you win, obviously, but also that the associate really wins, that they're put into an opportunity that's really good. It's a good opportunity. And you'll find that you'll keep them longer, you'll have less problems, all the things that you typically run into when you start to hear about associate practices and all the disasters. A lot of times it's the opportunity. It was I don't want to say minuscule, but close.
Yeah. If you don't know what you're doing and you get yourself in up to your neck, it seems like the only thing to do is to give them your patients. And pretty soon your income is down and they're dropping the ball with the patients they do get. So it would be a good idea to get with Wes and I and let us test your system before you take on an associate so that it is a win-win when the day's done.
Yeah, and if you're listening and that's what you're doing, you're have an associate and you're kind of giving them your patients, people that you've diagnosed, and you're like, I'm kind of busy, so I'll just let him do this or let her do this. That's you're headed down this wrong path. And the other thing that you'll hear a lot of our doctors, what they'll start saying, maybe I need to give them equity. Maybe that's the problem. They just don't have any equity, and that doesn't work either.
Actually, it works a little bit, just a little bit, not near enough to make it the win-win you're talking about.
Yeah, you can do the golden handcuffs and give them a small percentage of the practice, but if you want them to take the weight and the worry, their neck has to be on the line. They're the ones that have to cough up money when you're short. And until they get to 50% or more, I've seen plenty of 50-50 partnerships where even then the old man, so to speak, is still solving all the problems, still taking all the worry, and the whippersnapper is just along for the ride. And what do we do? Should we call the marketing company? They have no clue. And the old timer is still solving all the problems. That is not a solution in the sense of I'll tie them in and they'll start caring and worrying. That is, please don't fall into that. There's an appropriate time to give away equity and have somebody buy in, but it won't make them care more. Let's put it that way.
That's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Thanks for listening. And yeah, if you have any questions, give us a call.